Hi everybody. All right, we are going to go over your study guide for Unit 3 today. And the way that we're going to do this is I am going to give you a prompt for each question. So give you some ideas of ways or things that'll help you solve them. And then I want you to pause the video, try to solve it. And then after, I want you to check your answer with how I walk you through it. I do not want you just going through the video and just copying down my answers. So I want you to do it in the process that I'm trying to explain. So again, you're going to get a prompt. I'm going to give you some ideas of how to solve. Then you're going to pause the video, and then you're going to check your answers. So for number 1, it says, look at the graph below. Which equation represents the relationship shown in the graph? So the first thing you're going to want to look for is the y-intercept. Then you're going to want to find the slope, and then you're going to want to look for y equals mx plus or minus b. Y equals mx plus or minus b is our slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is what these equations are written in, and I need you to tell me which one represents the graph. Go ahead and pause. Okay, so now I'm looking for the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, which would be at 200. So I know that my y-intercept is my b value. So it's whatever my operation is at the end with that b value. And my b value in this case is going to be 200. And it is a positive 200. So now I need to figure out that number that's connected to x. So we call that the coefficient of x, or our slope. I need to figure out my slope. So I'm going to look for 2 points, and then I'm going to look for the vertical change over the horizontal change. So in this case, watch your axes. I go 10 up, 1 over, and 10 over 1 is 10. So y equals 10x plus 200. In this case, we're talking about months, and we're talking about the total bill. So we're working with the variable of t and n. So my answer would be C. Number 2, a swimming pool used in international competition with a volume of 660,000 gallons of water is to be drained for cleaning. The drain can empty 12 gallons of water from the pool every second. So that every second should be sticking out at you. Each second, every second, per second. Whenever we hear that, there's a certain word that should come to mind. So take a second, pause the video. So when I hear every second or per second or each second, the first thing that should come to mind is rate of change. So your rate of change is your slope is normally your per or your each. So this in this case is 12 gallons, but we're draining that 12 gallons. So since we're draining the 12 gallons, it would be going down. Therefore, our slope would be negative. What is the initial volume of water in the pool, which is given to us up in the word problem here, and that would be 660,000. All right, so I'm going to write an equation, and the equation is the same thing in y equals mx plus or minus b form. It's just using different variables. So it would be v equals negative 12t plus 660,000. All right, let's keep moving. Number 3, Martina started with 228 boxes of cookies and sold the same number each day for 4 days. After 4 days of selling, she was left with 100 boxes of cookies. So you're given 2 pieces of information: that she started with 228 boxes, and that after 4 days, she had 100 boxes left. So you have 2 different pieces of information. See if you can figure out what the slope of the line would be. Pause the video. So the way that you can do this, you can either pull the coordinates and use the slope formula, or you can create a table. But first you have to recognize those coordinates. So I have started with 228 boxes. So if I start with 228 boxes, that first coordinate would be 0 to 28. And then after 4 days, I have 100 boxes left. So those are the two coordinates that I can work with. So the way that you can do this is you can either do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 and use the slope formula, or you can create a table with my x and my y value, and I can find the difference in y over the difference in x, which is actually the way that I chose to do it when I was working through these problems. So the difference between 228 to 100 is a negative 128. You get the same thing if you were to use the slope formula over here, because I would have 100 minus 228 over 4 minus 0, and I still get a 128. Excuse me. And now from 0 to 4 is a positive 4. So again, on the bottom, I would still end up with a positive 4. So I would do the difference in my y value over the difference in my x value. Negative 128 over 4. And either way, again, with that slope formula, I get the same exact fraction, and that would be negative 32. So negative 32 is the slope of the line, but what that means in this problem is that she sells 32 boxes per day. All right. Number 4, write the equation of the line shown. So you're going to look for the y-intercept, look for the slope, and put it into y equals mx plus b form. Pause the video and go ahead. All right, and now I'm looking for the y-intercept. So the y-intercept here is at negative 3, my b value, negative 3, and my slope up and over, up 2 over 1. So then my equation would be y equals 2x minus 3, which in this case is b. Number 5, you're given a word problem. Swimming pool A started with a depth of 30 inches of water. Pool A was being filled at a rate of 2 inches per minute, a rate of 2 inches per minute. Swimming pool B is being filled as shown in the table. So I need to find the difference, which would give me the slope or the rate of change. I need to recognize where the y-intercept would be. How do I know where a y-intercept is in a table? And then I can write the two equations. So go ahead and pause. So for pool A, we are starting with 30 inches of water. So our start point on our graph, if we were to graph this, would be 30. So that means that our y-intercept would be 30. And then pool A is being filled at a rate of 2 inches per minute. So if I'm going per minute, again, per each, those are key words for my slope. So pool A's equation would be y equals 2x plus 30. Pool B, I'm now looking at the table, and in order to find the y-intercept in a table, I am looking for where x is 0. That's my start point, and where x is 0 in this case is my depth in inches is 20. So there's 20 inches of water in the pool when it starts to fill up. And then it's filling at a certain rate, so I need to find that rate by finding the difference. 20 to 26 is a positive 6. 0 to 2 is a positive 2. And then I find the difference by the difference of y, or the change of y, over the change in x. So that would be a 6 over 2. And 6 over 2 is 3. So my equation for pool B would be 3x plus 20. All right, number 6, find the equation y equals mx plus b for the linear relationship. So again, I'm looking at a table. I would use the same process I just did for swimming pool B. Look for the y-intercept and find the change in y, and place it over the change in x. Go ahead and pause the video, and you're going to be able to do 6 and 7 for this one. So go ahead. All right, so number 6, the first thing I'm going to look for is the y-intercept. Again, y-intercept is where x is 0. So where x is 0 in this case is a positive 11. And now I'm looking for the rate of change. So I have 14 to 11. Well, the difference from 14 to 11 is negative 3. And then the difference from negative 1 to 0 is positive 1. If I was to do that somewhere else, you should get the same answer. So 8 to 5, negative 3. 1 to 2, positive 1. So it does not matter what 2 points you're looking for that difference between, just that you're finding the difference. So my slope is the difference in y, over my difference in x, which is that positive 1. So then negative 3 over 1 is negative 3. So then my equation would be y equals negative 3x plus 11, which is B. For number 7, similar, same idea. I need to find the equations in order to talk about which one, or which statements I should say, are true. So again, I'm looking for the y-intercept where x is 0. So my y-intercept is negative 25. And we're talking about Yvette saving money to buy Christmas gifts. So she has to pay her sister back first. That's where this negative 25 is coming from. She has to pay her sister back first, and then she can start saving money. So her slope, I can find between any 2 points. So if I look at the difference in y over the difference in x, 14 to 53 is a positive 39. 4 to 8 is a positive 4. So I get 39 over 4. And that's 9.75. So my slope is 9.75, which leaves my equation y equals 9.75x minus 25. So now I'm reading through the statements and I'm trying to figure out which one is true. The slope of the line 9.75 is the amount of money she starts with after working 0 hours. Well, that's not true because she's negative when she starts. B, the slope of the line 9.75 is the amount of money she makes per hour. So the 975 is how much she's adding in per hour, which is true. Again, select all that apply normally means that there's more than one answer, so I'm going to keep going. The slope of the line 25, well, I can stop there because I know the slope of the line is not 25. The slope of the line is 975. D, the y-intercept of the line 975, that can't be true because I know the y-intercept is negative 25. E, the y-intercept of the line negative 25, that's true, is the amount of money she starts with since she owes her sister $25 and has worked 0 hours. And that is a true statement. And last, the y-intercept of the line 0, which is also not true. So for 7, you should have 2 answers, B and E. All right, number 8, we've done a couple times now. You're finding the equation of the line. Go ahead. All right, and now I have the y-intercept, which should be 3. And now I'm going up and over, up 2 over 3. So my slope is 2 over 3. Therefore, my equation is y equals 2/3 x plus 3. That answer is C. Number 9, another word problem. Latoya opens a savings account and made an initial deposit. After the initial deposit, she added money into the account each week. She added the same amount of money each week, and she did not make any withdrawals. After 4 weeks, she had $450. So after 4 weeks, $450. And after 9 weeks, she had $825. So I need to find, I'm reading through my questions, and I am looking for how much was added to her account each week, which means I'm looking for the rate of change or the slope. And then I'm looking for how much was the initial deposit, so when it started at 0, or I'm looking for the y-intercept. And then I need that equation. Well, in order to find the slope and the y-intercept, you have 2 pieces of information, and you are going to try to find the slope and the y-intercept. Go ahead and pause. All right, so now how I did this is I created a table. And by creating a table, I am able to manipulate the data that I need. So if I have, I'm going to leave a couple of these blank because I know what I'm going to need. So here I have 4, 450, and then I have 9, 825. So those are the 2 pieces I need. I could use the slope formula and find the slope that way, or I can just find the difference in y over the difference in x. So 450 to 825 is 375. 4 to 9 is 5. And therefore, I can tell you that my rate of change is 375 over 5, which is just 75. So 75 is my rate of change or my slope. So that's what she's adding each week. So then if I'm looking for the initial deposit, I have to bring it back to 0. So this would be 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to put 0 above. My 0 is going to be what my initial deposit is. So I'm just going to bring that table backwards until I can figure out what that initial deposit is. So 450 minus 75. And then 375 minus 75, 300 minus 75, and then 225 minus 75. And there's our sweet spot. There's the number that we need. So I have at 0 hours, or I'm sorry, at 0 weeks, so when she first initially starts, what is she starting that bank account with? And it would be $150. So she puts in $75 a week after she starts with that $150. So then the equation represented would be y equals 75x plus 150. All right, let's keep going. Number 10, Miss Hodson said that the graphs of the equation below are incorrect. Find the student's error. So there are 2 of them, one on this page and then one on the next. I want you to find the errors in the graph and then redraw them the way they should be. Go ahead and pause. All right, so for number 1, the student has a slope of 1/2 and then a y-intercept of 4. So the student started at 4, and a slope of 1/2 would be vertical 1, horizontal 2. So I'd be going up 1 over 2. And this student went down or graphed a negative slope. So the way that I would fix this is by graphing the slope properly. So I would be starting at positive 4, and I would be going up 1 over 2. Make sure that my line, I'm going to do that again. Make sure that my line is straight and that I have arrows on both sides. And that would be the graph. On number 2, student graph y equals negative 3/5 x minus 1. My slope is negative 3/5, which if I look at the graph, it goes down 1, 2, 3, and over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's right. And then my y-intercept is negative 1. Well, in this case, the student went to positive 1. So I want to start at negative 1. The student had the wrong y-intercept. So I start at negative 1, and then I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 5. And I'm going to create my line. Make sure it goes through both points and through the graph, and then add the arrows at the end. All right, number 11, write slope-intercept form of the equation for each line. We have done this a bunch of times. Y equals mx plus or minus b. Go for it. All right, I'm looking at A, so I'm looking for the y-intercept first. Should be a positive 3 is my y-intercept. And then I'm going to put that over here, positive 3. And then I'm looking for my slope. Here's my other point. Down 3 over 2. Down 3 over 2. Notice I made that a negative 3 because I was going down 3. So I get y equals negative 3/2 x plus 3. And keep going. I have 0, 0 as my y-intercept. So b is 0. And then I'm looking for my slope. Here's another point that I can read the coordinates of. So I'm going down 1 over 2. Down 1 over 2. So my slope, if I'm down 1, is negative 1. And then to the right, 2. Therefore, my equation would be y equals negative 1/2 x. I don't have to write the plus 0. I could write the plus 0 if I wanted to. It's not technically wrong, but traditionally we don't write plus 0, and it would just be negative 1/2 x. All right, last but not least, on C, I'm looking for the y-intercept, and the y-intercept here is negative 3, where it crosses the y-axis. And then I'm looking for my slope, which I don't see a slope. It doesn't go up or down any. So it would be 0, and it goes over a whole bunch of points if I wanted it to. So let's just say in this case it would be 2. Well, 0 over anything is just 0. So then my slope would be y equals 0x minus 3. And 0 times anything is just 0. So therefore I get the horizontal line for y equals negative 3. Number 12. Number 12 is just testing your knowledge of understanding what positive, 0, and negative slope represents in context. So you have this plane and it's cruising and it's descending and it's ascending, and I want to know which one represent what type of graph. So go ahead and read 12 and then tell me if A, B, and C are positive, 0, or negative slope. Remember, 0 slope is a flat line, positive slope is increasing or going uphill, and negative slope is decreasing or going downhill. Pause. So your clues here, cruising, descending, and ascending. So descending means down, ascending means up, and cruising means you're just staying level. So if I'm staying level, my slope would be 0. If I'm descending, my slope would be negative. And if I'm ascending, my slope would be positive. All right, number 13, a word problem. A group of hikers, and there's a graph there that shows their distance, and it's hours for the miles of distance that they've gone. So how far is the campsite from their car? Well, the way that the graph is a group of hikers park their car at a trailhead and hike into the forest to a campsite. The next morning, they head out on a hike. So the point at which they start is their campsite. So A is asking how far is the campsite from their car. So where do they start on their hike, which tells me how far their distance is from the car. And then B, you're going to write the equation for the relationship. So go ahead and answer A, B, and C. All right, so the point at which they are away from their car, so let's say their car is here. They hike to the campsite, so they are 4 miles from their car. How do I know that? Because that's their start point for their hike. So if 4 is their start point for the hike, then that 4 is also going to be my y-intercept. It's where I'm going to start. So if I'm writing the equation, I then need to find the slope as well. So I'm going to pull another point. I'm going to go up and over. I go up 3 over 1. So if my slope is 3 and my y-intercept is 4, my equation is y equals 3x plus 4. After how many hours will the hikers be 16 miles from their car? Well, I can look for 16 on the graph. So 16 miles would be going up the y-axis, which would be 16 right here, and I would bring it over and then bring it back down and try to find how many hours, which would be 4 hours. I could also plug into my equation 16 hours. So if I plugged in, 16 miles, if I plug in 16 for my y, I would get 3x plus 4. And then I could solve this equation. So I would have 16 minus 4 equals 3x plus 4 minus 4. And I would get 12 equals 3x and divide, which would leave me again with 4 hours. So either way, reading the graph or doing it algebraically is absolutely fine. Number 14, we're talking about finding slope between 2 points. And in order to find slope between 2 points, you need to use the slope formula. So the slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If I'm looking at number 1, and I'm trying to use the slope formula, I can then label my points. So this is an x and this is a y. This is an x and this is a y. 0, 5 is my first ordered pair, so I'm going to label those 1s. 8, 2 is my second ordered pair, so I'm going to label those 2s. And then I'm going to plug in those values. So 2 minus 5 over 8 minus 0. Be careful of your integer rules here. 2 minus 5 is negative 3. 8 minus 0 is 8. So my slope is negative 3 over 8. Please do the other two. Pause the video. Okay, so now I'm going to go on and I would label these all, and then I'm going to pull 1 minus negative 1 over 6 minus 2. I have a double negative here, so I'm going to change it to a positive, and I get 2 over 4. Well, 2 over 4 is the same thing as 1/2. Last, negative 5 minus negative 2 over negative 1 minus negative 3. Double negatives again. Negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. Negative 1 plus 3 is 2. All right, number 15. So the lines are there. They're just really hard to see. So I'm going to highlight them for you, and I need you to draw them on your paper darker. So here's one. And here's one. And here's one. And here's one. So for number 15, it wants you to write the equation for each line. Go ahead and do that, please. Okay, so now I am going to be looking at where it crosses the y-axis. So here I have this line crossing the y-axis here. I have a straight horizontal line, so that means I am going vertically nothing and over however many. So, but if I'm going vertically 0, no matter what, my slope is 0. So then the equation of this line here would be y equals 4 when simplified. Similar idea down here. I have a horizontal line, no vertical change. So I'm down 2 from the origin. Therefore, my equation is y equals negative 2. The opposite happens. So if my horizontal lines going through the y-axis are y equals lines, then my vertical lines going through the x-axis are x equal lines. So I'm looking at this point here where it crosses the x-axis at 5, and that line would be x equals 5. Similar, this line crosses the x-axis at negative 1, so that line would be x equals negative 1. All right, we're almost there. Number 16, draw the following lines and then write an equation for each. So I'm going to draw them and I'm going to write their equation as I go. So A, y-intercept is 5. My slope is 0. That means I go up nothing. So I have a horizontal line at 5 on the y-axis. So this would be y equals 5. I'm going to change my color to make this a little easier to see. So number 2 or B, I have a y-intercept of negative 1. My slope is 2. Up 2 over 1. Do it again. Up 2 over 1. Make sure it extends all the way out, and you put arrows on the end. So this would be y equals 2x minus 1. C, y-intercept of 1, and a slope of negative 2. Down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. I don't like how that line went, so I'm going to redo it. That's better. And make sure, again, it's going across through the lines and you have arrows. And that is y equals negative 2x plus 1. And last but not least, I have a slope of 1/2, but a y-intercept of negative 1. So I start at negative 1, and I go down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2. And that's pretty close. And this is an equation y equals negative 1/2 x minus 1. So number 17 is just formalizing how we graph a line, so similar to what you just did in number 16, and it's asking basically what are the steps in order to graph a line. So we did this in class. We made that little graphic organizer. So we started with step 1, which was making your slope into a fraction, and then it continued on. So go ahead and pause the video and tell me how you would graph y equals negative 4x minus 1. All right, so my first step would be make slope into fraction. So I have negative 4. And assume that secret number underneath of any whole number is 1. So negative 4 over 1. Number 2 is I'm going to plot the y-intercept. So the y-intercept in this case would be a negative 1. That point is 0, negative 1. So I'm going to go to 0, negative 1, and plot the point. Number 3, from the y-intercept, I then graph the slope. Or what we call vertical over horizontal. So in this case, my slope value is negative 4 over 1. So my vertical is negative 4, and my moves right or horizontal is my 1. Number 4, I make sure I have at least 3 points. So I continue to graph vertical over horizontal. And then I connect the linear relationship. And that's all. All right, I hope this helps. Please make sure you're asking questions if something doesn't make sense to you. If even at the end of this, you're still struggling, please make sure you reach out to your teacher and see what else you can do to study tonight before the assessment tomorrow. All right, good luck tomorrow, everybody.